The goal is not always to reveal truth, but to shape perceptions, often in the accuser's favor. The damage caused by this can be long-lasting. Reputations can be destroyed, relationships can be broken, and people can be left socially or emotionally isolated based solely on unverified words. When someone uses the word liar casually or manipulatively, they are bypassing the need to explain, reason, or support their claims. They are using a shortcut to discredit someone completely, leaving little room for that person to defend themselves. This kind of behavior can silence voices, end trust, and sow division. It replaces dialogue with judgment and fairness with bias. And unfortunately, once people hear the accusation, they may begin to view the accused through that lens, even if they have never witnessed dishonesty from them directly. Accusing someone of being a liar without offering clear evidence is a form of character assassination. It goes beyond disagreement or criticism. It strikes at the very foundation of a person's integrity. When someone says don't trust them, they're a liar without presenting any proof or context, they are not just making a statement about a specific situation, they are attacking that person's entire credibility. And once that label is placed on someone, it can be incredibly difficult to remove, even if it was completely unfounded. This is why such accusations carry serious weight and must be made with extreme care and responsibility. Character assassination is not always loud or dramatic. It can be subtle, wrapped in concerned tones, suggestive questions, or carefully worded statements designed to make someone doubt another person. It may look like gossip, backhanded compliments, or one-sided storytelling. But the need to control others' beliefs is a sign of insecurity, not truth. People who are confident in what they know do not need to manipulate others into agreement. They allow room for conversation, different viewpoints, and even disagreement, because they know that facts can withstand scrutiny. They don't see differing opinions as threats, they see them as part of a healthy, open-minded exchange. In contrast, someone who cannot tolerate opposition or questioning, and who resorts to name-calling or labeling others as liars, is often trying to protect a position built more on fear and pride than on truth. Being aware of this dynamic helps prevent manipulation and encourages fairness. It reminds us to be cautious when someone tries too hard to control our trust, especially through accusations that leave no room for discussion or doubt. The louder someone insists that another person shouldn't be trusted, the more closely we should examine what they themselves are trying to control. The goal is not to seek understanding or resolve a situation fairly, it's to ensure that others align with their perspective. By doing so, they reinforce their own sense of authority and security within the group or relationship. If people start thinking for themselves or questioning the accuser's version of the story, their grip weakens. This kind of manipulation is especially dangerous because it often goes unnoticed at first. The accuser may seem convincing, well-spoken, or emotionally persuasive. They might play on past events, exaggerate small truths, or omit context to make their claim seem airtight. And when others begin to believe them without verifying the facts, the damage can spread quickly. Trust can be destroyed, people can be isolated, and group dynamics can shift based on fear rather than fairness. Over time, the person who constantly accuses others of lying becomes a gatekeeper of information, deciding who gets believed and who gets dismissed. People who constantly label others as liars often fear losing control. Accusations, especially repeated and forceful ones, are frequently used not to reveal truth but to establish dominance. When someone says don't trust them, they are a liar without offering solid evidence, they are not just making a statement, they are making a power move. They want to direct how others think, feel, and respond. It is less about the accused person and more about the accuser maintaining influence over the narrative and the people involved in it. Control in this context is not physical, it is psychological and social. This tactic plays out in many areas of life at work, in families and friendships, and even in public discourse. The person making the accusation may present themselves as the victim, the whistleblower, or the only one with insight. They build a story that places them at the center of credibility while subtly, or not so subtly, eroding the reputation of someone else. An honest person does not need to silence others to make themselves believable. Instead, they allow others the freedom to think, question, and come to their own conclusions, because they know that truth is best recognized, not forced. In any situation, whether personal, professional, or public, the reaction to being questioned can reveal much more than the words being said. Honesty has a quiet confidence. It doesn't need to shout or hide. But deception, on the other hand, often disguises itself in noise and accusations to avoid being revealed. Paying attention to how someone responds when truth is pursued can often tell you more than any accusation ever could. They value transparency because they know their words align with their actions. They do not try to silence others, nor do they try to create chaos to distract from the facts. They know that honesty brings peace, while lies bring confusion, division, and fear. When someone goes out of their way to prevent others from asking questions or hearing another side, it's often a sign that they are not standing on the solid ground of truth, but are trying to protect a lie from crumbling under scrutiny. It's also important to recognize that truth does not need to be guarded by manipulation. It doesn't require secrecy, gossip, or emotional blackmail to be accepted. When someone reacts with panic or hostility to simple, fair questions, that behavior should raise concerns. This is why it's important to observe how someone responds when they are asked to explain themselves. A person who becomes aggressive, evasive, or immediately shifts the blame to someone else may not be as truthful as they seem. Instead of answering questions directly, they may respond with more accusations, emotional appeals, or attempts to discredit the person asking. This behavior is not a defense of truth. It's a defense of the illusion they are trying to maintain. They fear being exposed, not because they are misunderstood, but because the truth threatens to unravel the false image they have created. People with integrity understand that truth can withstand pressure. They are patient with those who seek clarity, even if those questions are difficult. People who speak the truth are not afraid of being questioned. In fact, those who are honest often welcome questions, clarification, and even scrutiny because they have nothing to hide. Truth is stable, it doesn't change when examined, and it doesn't rely on manipulation to be accepted. When someone genuinely tells the truth, they do not feel threatened by others seeking to understand more. They remain calm, consistent, and open, even if their words are uncomfortable or unpopular. On the other hand, people who lie often react defensively when questioned. They try to shut down inquiries, deflect blame, or cast suspicion elsewhere because questions are dangerous to their carefully constructed stories. But this tactic is not always loud or obvious. It can be subtle, a private conversation, a warning framed as concern, a seed of doubt dropped in casual dialogue, and that's why it's so important to stay aware and alert. When someone tries to separate you from another person's perspective, ask yourself why. Ask yourself who benefits from your silence or your judgment. Ask yourself if you're being pushed toward a conclusion without being given all the information. Recognizing this pattern doesn't just help you protect others, it helps you protect yourself. Because the same person who isolates others to gain your trust today might one day turn the same tactics on you. When you allow someone to control your view of others, you give up your independence of thought. Staying open, curious, and critically engaged with all sides of a story is not just an act of fairness, it's a defense against manipulation and control. They may position themselves as your protector, your insider, the one who really knows what's going on. They create a sense of urgency, whispering that someone else is dangerous, dishonest, or not to be trusted. And once you start to doubt the other person, they work to keep that doubt alive by feeding you selective information or negative stories while making sure the accused has little to no opportunity to defend themselves. This kind of manipulation is especially effective in group dynamics. In workplaces, families, or communities, a manipulator may gradually turn people against one individual, making them appear untrustworthy or unstable. Over time, the isolated person may be left voiceless, judged by accusations rather than truth, and unable to regain trust no matter what they do. Meanwhile, the manipulator thrives in the silence they've created, using it as proof that their accusations were right all along. Manipulators often isolate others to control the narrative. One of the most common tactics used by people who aim to deceive is to isolate their target, whether it's a person, a group, or even just a single opinion, so they can control what others see, hear, and believe. When someone says, "Don't trust them, they're a liar," they are not just casting doubt. They are attempting to cut off the connection between you and that person. They don't want you to hear the other side. They don't want you to ask questions, compare facts, or form your own conclusions. They want to control the narrative, and isolation is one of the most effective ways to do it. This tactic works because humans are naturally social and emotional. We tend to want to belong, to side with the majority, or to avoid conflict. A manipulative person understands this instinct and uses it to push you toward their version of the truth, often without you realizing it. Thinking critically doesn't mean being cold or unfeeling, it means being careful and fair. It means recognizing that the loudest voice isn't always the most honest one, and that real understanding takes effort. It means valuing truth over drama, and substance over style. When you hear someone make a strong accusation, your first response shouldn't be to take their side, it should be to start asking questions. By approaching situations with a thoughtful, analytical mindset, you give yourself the power to see through deception. You create space for clarity instead of confusion. And in doing so, you protect not only your own integrity, but the integrity of the people and communities around you. Think critically, not emotionally. When someone makes a bold claim like "don't trust them, they are a liar," it can trigger a strong emotional response, especially if the accusation is directed at something you work with or have doubts about. Emotion is a powerful force. It can cloud judgment, speed up decisions, and bypass reason entirely. That's why manipulators often use emotionally charged language. They want you to react, not reflect. They want to stir suspicion, anger, or fear. Because when you're emotional, you're more likely to take their words at face value instead of questioning them. By rushing to believe accusations without examining the behavior of both parties, we risk judging unfairly and doing harm to innocent people. This is especially true in environments where trust is fragile, such as workplaces, friendships, families, or communities. In these spaces, false accusations can cause long-term damage, and once trust is broken, it can be hard to repair. So instead of immediately accepting what someone says about another person, take a step back and observe. Watch how they act when they think no one is watching. Consider whether their words align with their patterns of behavior. And above all, resist the urge to judge based on loud accusations. The truth is more often revealed in silent actions than in shouted claims. When we make the effort to look deeper and think critically, we begin to see people for who they truly are, not just who others claim them to be. By rushing to believe accusations without examining the behavior of both parties, we risk judging unfairly and doing harm to innocent people. This is especially true in environments where trust is fragile, such as workplaces, friendships, families, or communities. In these spaces, false accusations can cause long-term damage, and once trust is broken, it can be hard to repair. So instead of immediately accepting what someone says about another person, take a step back and observe. Watch how they act when they think no one is watching. Consider whether their words align with their patterns of behavior. And above all, resist the urge to judge based on loud accusations. The truth is more often revealed in silent actions than in shouted claims. When we make the effort to look deeper and think critically, we begin to see people for who they truly are, not just who others claim them to be. It's shown in whether their words match their consistent behavior. If someone consistently shows honesty, reliability, and respect in their actions, then an accusation against them deserves scrutiny before belief. On the other hand, if the accuser is known for spreading rumors, stirring conflict, or acting inconsistently, their accusations should be taken with caution. It is also important to remember that people who are telling the truth do not fear close examination. They welcome it because they have nothing to hide. But those who are hiding something often try to keep the spotlight on someone else, hoping you will never notice the cracks in their own story. Judge by actions, not accusations. In a world where words can be easily manipulated and used as weapons, it is essential to focus on what people do rather than what they claim. Actions are far harder to fake than spoken words. A person may say all the right things and make bold accusations about others, but if their behavior contradicts their words, that contradiction is where the truth often lies. When someone accuses another of being a liar, it is tempting to believe them based on the passion or certainty in their voice. But emotion does not equal truth, and volume does not validate a claim. People can be incredibly convincing when they want to manipulate your perception. They may speak with confidence, use persuasive language, and appeal to your emotions, hoping that you will take their side without thinking critically. But true character is revealed over time, not in a single dramatic moment. It's seen in how someone treats others when they have nothing to gain. This method isn't just dishonest, it's dangerous. It turns conversations into conflicts, turns trust into suspicion, and poisons relationships. People who use this tactic want others to react emotionally, not rationally. They want to create sides, to isolate someone, to push their narrative so strongly that no one pauses to ask, where's the proof? They confuse volume with validity, assuming that if they shout liar loud enough, others won't notice their own inconsistencies. In contrast, truthful individuals don't rely on personal attacks. They remain composed, provide evidence, and speak with clarity. They don't feel the need to exaggerate or accuse, they let the facts do the talking. And when someone truly has nothing to hide, they don't fear other perspectives being heard. Truth doesn't demand the silence of others, lies do. This method isn't just dishonest, it's dangerous. It turns conversations into conflicts, turns trust into suspicion, and poisons relationships. People who use this tactic want others to react emotionally, not rationally. They want to create sides, to isolate someone, to push their narrative so strongly that no one pauses to ask, where's the proof? They confuse volume with validity, assuming that if they shout liar loud enough, others won't notice their own inconsistencies. In contrast, truthful individuals don't rely on personal attacks. They remain composed, provide evidence, and speak with clarity. They don't feel the need to exaggerate or accuse, they let the facts do the talking. And when someone truly has nothing to hide, they don't fear other perspectives being heard. Truth doesn't demand the silence of others, lies do. Truth doesn't need defense by attack. When someone resorts to attacking another person's character to prove their own honesty, it often reveals weakness rather than strength. A person who is genuinely truthful doesn't need to tear others down to make themselves look credible. Truth, by its very nature, stands on its own. It is supported by facts, consistency, and transparency, not by slander, accusations, or manipulation. When someone repeatedly insists that another person is a liar, especially in an aggressive or emotional way, it's important to question their motives. Are they defending themselves, or are they trying to control the story? Sometimes people attack others not because the other person is dishonest, but because the truth threatens their own version of events. They may fear that if others are believed, their lies will be exposed. So instead of presenting evidence or calmly clarifying facts, they choose a louder, more dramatic route, character assassination. What is this person trying to cover up? This tactic is especially effective in situations where people are already unsure or emotionally vulnerable, because it plays on fear and suspicion. This kind of deflection is not always obvious. It can come in subtle forms, suggestive comments, raised eyebrows, or casual remarks meant to sow doubt. But regardless of the form, the intention remains the same: to avoid accountability and place others on the defensive. It is not about seeking truth, it's about preserving power, image, or influence. When we allow ourselves to be swayed by such tactics, we risk turning our backs on people who may be innocent, honest, or misunderstood. Worse, we may empower someone who is willing to lie or manipulate to protect themselves. In any relationship, whether personal, professional, or public, this kind of deflection should always raise questions, not provide answers. It is a sign that someone may be more interested in control than in truth. Deflection is a red flag. When someone quickly points the finger at another person and labels them a liar, especially without offering any real context or evidence, it often says more about the accuser than the accused. This behavior is a form of deflection, a tactic used to shift attention, suspicion, or scrutiny away from oneself and onto someone else. It's a psychological maneuver that manipulative individuals often use to protect their own image or to control the narrative in their favor. Think of it like this: if someone is hiding something or fears being questioned, the easiest way to divert attention is to cast doubt on another person. By loudly accusing someone else of dishonesty, they create a distraction. They stir emotions, plant confusion, and make people question someone else's credibility instead of asking. Blind trust in the words of someone who vilifies others can lead you away from truth and into manipulation. The wise path is to evaluate people based on what they do over time, not on what someone else claims in the heat of the moment. In truth, trust that is earned is quiet, stable, and resilient, while trust that is declared loudly, especially at the expense of others, is often a mask for insecurity, deceit, or hidden agendas. So when someone tells you not to trust another person and labels them a liar without evidence, remember, real trust doesn't need to be shouted. It needs to be shown. Blind trust in the words of someone who vilifies others can lead you away from truth and into manipulation. The wise path is to evaluate people based on what they do over time, not on what someone else claims in the heat of the moment. In truth, trust that is earned is quiet, stable, and resilient, while trust that is declared loudly, especially at the expense of others, is often a mask for insecurity, deceit, or hidden agendas. So when someone tells you not to trust another person and labels them a liar without evidence, remember, real trust doesn't need to be shouted. It needs to be shown. Trust is one of the most powerful yet fragile foundations in human relationships. It cannot be demanded, forced, or manufactured with loud words or dramatic accusations. When a person says, "Don't trust them, they are a liar," they are not offering you truth, they are attempting to install doubt through manipulation. Real trust doesn't come from what someone says about others. It comes from what they consistently show through their own actions. A trustworthy individual does not need to tear others down to lift themselves up. They let their actions speak for them, and they allow time to prove their integrity. When someone insists you shouldn't trust someone else, especially without offering context, evidence, or reason you should ask, what are they trying to gain? What are they trying to hide? Often it is those who cry liar the loudest who are afraid of being exposed themselves.